Koller Croft back with us to discuss her brand new book, We Love the Nightlife. And our good friend Olivia Fierro, award-winning journalist and podcast and book club in the Valley, is going to be conducting the interview tonight. So I'm going to hand it over to Olivia.
Well, thank you very much. And good evening, everybody. And come on in.
Hi, everyone. Yes, come in. Don't be shy.
What we should be doing is we should be playing
Welcome,
disco music.
welcome.
And anybody who walks in has to dance to the tune We Love the Nightlife. We like to boogie or got to boogie or I
That's
don't know
right.
the ways, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I love the nightlife. I love to boogie.
So good evening, everybody. And if I'm not trying to be rude, I'm going to try to share our stream on my phone in one moment. But Rachel, it is wonderful to see you again. I don't always put this exact look together. I stopped really fast because I realized she had been doing her book tour in disco-inspired outfits. So I said, I better go back and take this linen off and put on some sequins. And then she showed up in classic
I know. I didn't
black.
wear any
But that's
disco.
okay.
But I do have my vampire rings on. I have my little bat and my little
excellent.
fangs, so that counts.
That's the party favor we should get because I would love to have
Yes.
the teeth.
Mm-hmm.
So congratulations. We were saying about a year and a half ago that you were here in Scottsdale visiting your mom and getting to know all of us here in Arizona and visiting the classic, iconic Poison Pen bookstore. So many incredible authors have been here over the years. So first of all, tell us how it has been. You were you already had been working as a professional writer, but you were celebrating your debut novel. So how has the last year and a half of your life been now that you're able to just like toss that around? Like, hi, have we met? I'm a novelist.
It's really been such a whirlwind. Like, I can't believe that was 18 months ago. It feels like it was a month ago.
You could have had 2 babies.
I guess I could have in theory. Yeah, so it's been really wonderful because the reception for Stone Cold Fox was so enthusiastic. It was really a fun debutante year, as I like to call it. But it did make me a little nervous for my second book because how is it going to live up to the experience? And I'm so fortunate that it has been. I was worried that people were going to be like, why the hell is she writing a vampire novel? Because it feels like it's quite different from my first. And I guess in that respect it is. However, there are wild women at the center, just like there was in Stone Cold Fox. So I still feel like my brand is intact. But yeah, it's been wonderful.
Yeah, just a little bloodier, but definitely
Yes.
on brand, I would say. And also, by the way, I mean, the cover for the paperback of Stone Cold Fox looks awesome.
Thank you.
So that it's kind of like you get to celebrate all over again when something comes out in paperback, right?
Totally. So in April that came out, and I actually got to do a launch in Charleston, South Carolina, which was very
Ooh.
exciting. I'd never been there before, but that was a lot of fun. And it's nice because I feel like some people really do prefer having a paperback for their reading material because they like to take it to the beach or the pool or in the bath. So now I just feel like it's reaching more readers, which is great.
I mean, you want to take a bath with more people. I mean, if that's possible, then that's the relationship you want to have. So talk about the origination of this idea. And first of all, let's do the introduction to our friends here of We Love the Nightlife.
Oh, sure. So We Love the Nightlife is about 2 women that have been friends for roughly 50 years, and things are going off the rails. They have a lot of resentment towards one another. And to kind of get things back on track, they decide to open a nightclub together in London. And also they are vampires.
Oh, yeah, and the vampire part. So it really is a dissection of toxic, controlling friendships, but it's also a celebration of kind of, I think especially that late 1970s time period that people are really fascinated with. That just seems like to have been a party gal at that time of life when you could just be out all night and dancing, until the sun comes up or, before the sun comes up in this case, is just, it's an amazing space to be in, but it still is really playing with a lot of the same themes that you could apply to female dynamics anywhere.
Totally. And the vampire part kind of came last. So the way this idea came to me is I was watching a documentary about Studio 54. And it came out, I don't know, a few years ago. And I was watching it because, I don't know, I wasn't alive during that time, but I'm always fascinated by that time. So I'm watching it and it's checking all the boxes I think it's going to check. But I was really taken with the friendship between the guys that started it. And that was sort of an unexpected takeaway. And my brain wheels started turning, and I was like, well, what would it have been like if two women had opened a nightclub like that at that time? But you still need like a conflict and a story engine. So I'm like, okay, maybe this could be like a good friendship breakup story. But I think this is my screenwriter brain and my business lady brain. I could just anticipate feedback from the market and my editor, like, well, that still feels a little small or something to that effect. And then I don't know how it popped in my head, but I was like, what if they were vampires? Because it just adds so much, like, I hate making these stupid puns, but it's like hard not to, but it literally raises the stakes because it's life and death. And it also
gives it some bite.
Yeah, it gives it some bite. You know, you can really sink your teeth into it. And I personally really like spooky, scary things. I always have. And vampires are my favorite because they're rich, hot, and funny. So I just kind of ran with it. And I'm so happy I did because it sounded weird at the outset, but it really did come together.
Yeah, it did. And it is, there's something obviously about vampires that it is captivating to generations of people. I mean, it is perfect for so many parts of entertainment and books and films and whatever, but it can always be retold in a different way. But yet we like the familiarity of, we think we know the concept. We think we know what their experience is like, or the type of people who are drawn into this life, and what it would be like to be caught up in something that you can never get out of it. I mean, there's a lot of things that I say, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, but I don't really mean forever.
Right.
You know, forever. And in this case, forever is forever. So it sort of just made me kind of even play with the ideas of just, gosh, why do we get so fascinated by these characters? I mean, I was just thinking about, Interview with a Vampire being one of the first like kind of big books that I was.
That's my favorite.
It's hot, right?
Yeah, and I remember seeing that movie when I was probably too young, and it's funny because I write this vampire book, and everyone was like, "Oh, were you really into like Twilight and stuff?" And not on purpose, but I think that just came out when I was like busy being a party girl myself. I didn't really engage. But Interview with the Vampire was like very close to my heart when I was writing this, and I thought a lot about True Blood as well. If anyone watched that show,
I watched every episode of that show. Yeah. If you haven't, go back. It's waiting for you, and you will not be sorry. So, okay, I also want to hear a little bit about how different it is to get to work on book number. Oh, stop! I'm sorry, you guys. Congratulations. USA Today.
Thank you.
Bestseller list. And instant bestseller.
Yes, instantly it was on the USA Today bestseller list. It was very exciting.
Like that's kind of amazing, right? So that yay.
Thanks, team.
It's very amazing. I mean, I can't do anything instantly. Like instant soup doesn't even feel that instant. So to be an instant bestseller is amazing. So you're coming into this coming off of a very successful debut, having all of those feelings and all of that excitement. And it's like you do this amazing thing and it's like, okay, go ahead and do it again. When will you be done with the second one? That's a completely different dynamic. So how much did it change the way that you're able to come at the story and what it felt like?
It was so different. This book was so hard to write.
It became a job, right?
Yeah, and I think part of it too was I'm really glad this is my second book and I love it. But looking back, I'm like, wow, okay. Because Stone Cold Fox is relatively chronological. There's a handful of flashbacks from her childhood, but it doesn't really, it's a pretty straightforward story in that regard. This book, I was like, okay, I'm going to have two vampires, so I'm going to have dual POV. I'm going to set it in London, which is a foreign country or foreign city that I know very well, but still have to consider everything that goes on there. And it's a supernatural book as well. Oh, and I'm spanning the course of 50 years, plus a smattering of the Victorian era, which doesn't spoil anything. But it was just a big, ambitious swing, and as a result, it was much more taxing on me to sit down and write it. It was the first time in my career as a screenwriter or novelist where I had to put every single thing on a note card and lay it down on the ground it looked like a serial killer sometimes. Like I had all this, like I looked crazy, and switching things around because you have all of these twists and things that you want to hit in certain parts. And when your timelines are shifting all the time, it makes it that much more difficult. However, it was very rewarding to finish. So I'm super proud of it, but like the process was honestly horrendous. My poor husband.
Required a little bit more, right?
Yeah, I was a little nuts.
So book number 3 will be it all takes place in a single afternoon. So it'll be great dialogue, but not a lot's going to happen.
But the beauty of this is now I feel like I truly can write anything. I feel like I got it now. But
definitely.
We'll see.
The mood of London in the late 1970s. I mean, that's where a lot of our story is happening. So talk about the ladies and how you came up with them and how you would describe their characteristics.
Wow. Okay, so we have 2 women vampires at the start. We have Nicola, who has been a vampire for 200 years since the Victorian era, and she's very woman of the world, thinks she has everybody's number, and she's had different companions over the years, and when they try to leave her, she kills them.
Nobody likes to be left. Let's get real.
She has issues. So at this nightclub in 1979, she meets Amber, who is 23 from America, newly married to a British guy and is kind of already disillusioned and bored. And she's very taken with Nicola's way of life. This woman has her own money. She has her own house. She goes out whenever she wants to. And over the course of their friendship, Nicola ultimately reveals to Amber that she is a vampire and would like to have Amber join her in the vampiric lifestyle. And after some hemming and hawing, Amber agrees. And so Amber's chapters are told in the present day, in the now, when she's thinking about trying to escape Nicola. And the past chapters are narrated by Nicola, and they start in 1979, but we do actually pop forward to some other years as well. So we have a bit of the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and today, not to sound like the radio station, but it wasn't my initial plan. But as I was drafting, I realized that I wanted everything to kind of come together at the end in this big crescendo, and that was the best way to do it.
So, everybody obviously changes when they're literally. I mean, it's a obvious change from human to vampire, and ultimately, I guess you would say accentuates or exacerbates like kind of who they are already.
And you're frozen in time in a lot of
So
ways.
that part was very appealing to me because,
Me too.
you get to run into an ex-boyfriend or husband and, 40 years later, and he's looking at it going, she must be a ghost,
Right.
because they look the same. They are old and, the vampires look the same. But it is an intense way to live.
It certainly is. And one of the things that I had to think about when I'm writing in their voices is that both of them appear to be roughly 23, 24, 25 for their entire life. But that's not necessarily who they are on the inside. But if you haven't been perceived in society as an older person, you still are going to have some emotional stunting. So I did have to consider a lot about their voices and what they would say and what they would think, because Amber essentially in the present is roughly like my mother's age. So she looks 23, but this is a woman that's...
You do as well.
Yes, of course. But I just mean in 1979, she was 23. In 2024, she's a grown woman. And then Nicola's 200 plus. So she thinks she's seen everything and is rarely impressed by anything. And so she kind of has this devil may care attitude. So I just had to really consider their specific circumstances in every single thing I had them say, every decision I had them make. But it was really fun to be in their heads because both of them, they're really different, but they're both fun. And that was exciting.
They're both fun. They both love to go out and have a good time. They both have, the power of being young in appearance and beautiful, which matters in the spaces where they are. And it kept making me think about the film I just watched it. Knocked Up, where they're at the in
I know
line
exactly
to go
what
to the club.
scene you're talking about. Am I
Right.
too old to be here? Am I too old to be here?
Yes. And he's saying, you should be home doing yoga or something like that. And but they don't ever experience that because
Right.
they never change in appearance. But it doesn't mean that everything has the same appeal on the inside.
Correct. And, Amber eventually comes to, I don't know if she ever full out says it, but she regrets her decision, but it's irreversible.
Right.
And so she sees some light at the end of the tunnel if she can get away from Nicola, who over time has just become very controlling and jealous and power hungry and having Amber under her thumb, and Amber's tired of it. So she comes up with a plan, but it's dangerous if Nicola finds out the truth.
Dun, dun, dun. Let me have my teeth come out. If only I could do it. Oh, I wish I could. What kind of research did you do for this book?
So when I thought of the idea, I thought I was going to set it in New York or LA. But at the time, I was living in London temporarily with my husband. He was there for work, and I've been there several times. It's my favorite city in the whole world. I just love it. So I'm like, why don't I set it here? Because I actually think
Because
that
then you could write off that whole stay.
exactly. We were already there for his job, so that was extra easy to do. But it was just one of those things that actually made the vampiric stuff that much richer because obviously the UK is a much older country, and I could play into a lot of the vampire stuff that I don't think would have played the same way had I set it in New York or LA. But every single place in the book is a place I've been or spent time, except for the nightclub Tramp. I couldn't figure out how to get in there, but I will at some point. But that's where the royals go, so it's very exclusive. But the other members clubs I got in.
Okay.
So
So what kind of insight did you take away from these experiences?
Well, I'm sure they're not.
Behind
They're
the
great.
velvet rope.
Yeah, I mean they're great. They're beautiful, but I do think there is something to these clubs probably in 1979 versus now.
Yeah.
And that is one of the reasons the vampires open up the nightclub that they do, because they're trying to harken back to the time where people weren't on their phones and people's lips weren't all blown out. It was all just very gritty and fun and very disco.
Very disco.
So, but the clubs are great. They're lovely. But I can't imagine they're anywhere near as exciting or glamorous as they probably were when they, in 1979 or even before.
When it was a little freer.
The
and
heyday of
Yes.
70s music, disco, things like that.
glamour and very, very, very late nights.
Yes.
So when you sat down and said, okay, finally, this is going to become a vampire book, ultimately, was that a tough sell to your editor?
No.
Okay.
Crazily enough, this was my most half-baked idea. I had all these ideas I thought they were going to be really into, and they liked them, but I could tell it wasn't a home run. And I almost didn't even bring up this idea because literally all I had was two vampire besties open a nightclub together. And so I was like, and I have this other idea that I don't really have much meat on yet, but this is the gist. And we were on Zoom and my editor was just like, that's the one, that's the one. So when we hung up, I was like, holy shit, I'm writing a vampire book. That's so crazy. And I really had nothing plotted. So it was a daunting task. But the girls came pretty easy to me. The plot is always harder, but I felt like Nicola and Amber were pretty fully formed from the beginning. In particular, Nicola. Amber, I had to work on a little bit more. I took it a little bit as a challenge to write a likable character. I feel like people were saying in Stone Cold Fox there were no likable characters, which was kind of the point, but I like them. But I wanted Amber to be the obvious likable character in this book. But I'm still hearing some people don't think that, so maybe that's not my forte.
Likable is in the eye of the beholder.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you could say that a vampire is maybe a little more innocent, it would be her, right? She's got a moral
She's
compass
one of
in
us.
there.
And I feel like that's one of the things I think is really cool about exploring vampirism in a novel is vampires aren't born, they're made, they were human once. And how connected they are to their human self, varies by vampire. And Amber's much closer to her human self compared to Nicola, but it's still there for all of them because there's a lot of fun vampire side characters too that were fun to play with too.
So you, though, did dispel some vampire, I guess, I don't know, myths or, well, I don't know. I guess it's all myths, but I hope. I don't know. But, some of the things that we think about vampires, your characters say, oh, no, that's
Yeah,
not real.
I kind
This
of
isn't real.
just-
Let's go through a couple of
Yeah,
them.
I picked what suited my story because it's my book. so so they can't go out in the sun. That's how they die. They do have to be invited in. They can compel someone to do something like very powerful powers of persuasion, but they can still look in the mirror because they have to look good before they go out. So I just kind of picked and chose what suited the story best. But I tried to use things that we all kind of have, strangely, even if you're not into spooky stuff, I feel like we all know something about vampires. And so it was always meant to be the window dressing of this novel. I mean, I built a world out, but I wasn't inventing too much as far as like what we know about vampires. I was more just omitting things that I didn't feel suited the story, but they don't like sparkle or anything like that in the sun.
But they can be photographed and they can be seen in
Yes.
but I did enjoy the descriptions of kind of the way that did people's blood smell, kind of based on like their wealth. Even you can kind of tell when they like are eating fancy food. And
Their blood's
things
better
like,
if they have a better diet.
yeah.
I have one part where the Amber's like, that man's tie was Hermes. Like, it was very nutritious.
There's some quality to that blood if you're going to be feeding, right?
exactly.
So I think one of the reasons why people get very intrigued by vampires too is it's usually thought to be like a very sort of sexy, sexual type of character, dynamic relationship. So how did that play into your?
Well, I think because I do like vampire stories, but I feel like they're always about the men.
Yeah.
And the women, maybe they're vampires, but usually they're human. And it's about the guy vampires. And so I really wanted to write about girly pop vampires because I feel like we don't see a lot of female vampires in books. Luckily, we're having kind of a surge. My friend Rachel Harrison, her book just came out, So Thirsty, which is about female vampires. So I just feel like the time was ripe. And yeah, they are sexy and appealing. And I feel that way about disco and nightclubs. It just felt like they went together really well.
Yeah.
So that part was always adding to the mood and the vibe. And, I wanted it to be a sultry novel.
What was your writing? What were your habits? What was your setup? Your process as you were writing? Were you playing the disco music and wearing the sequins while you were writing? Were you staying up all night and writing at 3 a.m.?
I was pretty much chained to my desk. I was writing constantly to hit my deadline. But I did have some, like I had playlists and earlier drafts of the novel. I actually had songs as the chapter titles, but that was helpful at first. And then it started to hinder the story and where it was going. So I ditched that. But I did have a playlist. I had gone to Salem, Massachusetts recently, and they have this store called Vamp Fangs. And I bought this candle that looks like a prayer candle, but it was red and had like vampire stuff on it. And when things got really tough, I was like, I better start lighting this candle. Maybe it will help me. And I lit it every time I was writing. But I write at home. My dog's usually nearby. I'm not like a coffee shop writer. I wish I was. I feel like that's so festive, but I like quiet or just my own music. But chatter and espresso machines would not be good for me.
I was thinking a candle, dark, red wine,
Yeah.
the blood color, the whole. No.
Yeah, I leaned into it. I might as well. It like adds to the mood.
So what is the experience like coming out with book number 2 and meeting readers and still I'm sure getting feedback from your first novel? And also I think of course there was like some interest in and you coming from television as well and film, some interest in taking that to the screen. So what happens now with all this?
Yeah, so Stone Cold Fox is still in development for a TV show. I don't know if anyone knows this, but things take a long time to get made in Hollywood. So watch the space. I don't have a juicy update, but I'm starting to take meetings for We Love the Nightlife, and I'm very optimistic and excited. I'm open to TV and film, but if I had my dream choice would be it's a big movie like Barbie big, and I write it and direct it.
Oh, yes. Put it
So
out there.
we'll see. But I feel good about it. And as far as the comparison to Stone Cold Fox and just meeting readers, I feel like I'm very happy that my readers seem to have trusted me, because I do think some people were a little apprehensive about reading a vampire book. Conversely, there's so many people that love vampire stuff, and they were like, oh, yes, I'm all in. You don't need to sell me on this. But there are others that are like, I wasn't sure I was going to like this, but I love it. So that felt really good.
Well, I think that is, we get stuck in kind of our genres that we're used to reading or we know that we like. And so it is great when somebody takes you out of your pattern of what you usually would reach for. And then you realize, I mean, good characters are good characters, and it's just another setting that can be, bringing you into a story that takes you someplace else. So that's a wonderful
and genre
experience.
mashups are fun. I like
Yes.
reading them. I like writing them. I like having some element of the story that's like just left of center, just to make it feel fresh and new.
So once you go out and you talk about this book and it's out in the universe and it's already on a bestseller list, do you already have an idea for what you do next, or do you just give it a...
I do know what my next book is going to be, but I don't really share that. What I can share is that, so my first book was basically about a mother-daughter relationship. This book is about a female friendship, and my third book is going to be about a marriage. So that's all I'll say.
Oh,
But I'm excited about it.
Your husband's so stressed out.
No, he loves the
Okay,
idea.
good.
It's really cool because my husband works in entertainment too. So, and he doesn't blow smoke. And like when I tell him something, he'll tell me if he thinks it's really good or if it needs work. Gently, if he doesn't like something, he's not an asshole. But he's someone that I really trust, and he thinks the idea is awesome, and so do I. I'm excited about it. So it's still early days. Like I'm in the middle of drafting, but I feel good about it. I feel like it's gonna be fun.
Yay. So have you been able to, and I'm sure as people communicate with you, and one of the cool things about meeting your readers is maybe you're inspiring people who are interested in writing themselves or have questions for you about all of that. Are you surprised by anything that you hear from readers, or have you felt kind of, like a connection in terms of maybe somebody's getting inspired to do something
I hope
new?
people are getting inspired. I mean, writing is like sometimes it's really lonely, and this is like the part that's so fun, is to meet readers that are engaged with your work. And I'm even kind of a sicko. I read like every Goodreads review, because even if someone doesn't like it, it doesn't really bother me. Not every book is for everybody, but I just like to know what people are saying about it. I find it really interesting. Not every writer wants to do that, and that's fine. I just have like a thick skin. I can take it. But I like to know what the conversation is around my book. And then meeting readers is always a treat. And I do meet a lot of readers that are writers. And they ask, like for tips or advice or something, some wisdom. And truly what I always try to say is, it's going to feel weird maybe to you, but you have to be your number one fan. You have to be so obsessed with what you're writing. You have to think it's awesome and great and talk to people about it if you want to do it professionally and show it to people. Some people just want to write for themselves, and that is totally, totally fine. But if you want to publish, you have to get amped on yourself. Because that's how you make it happen and get other people excited to publish your work.
That's great advice. And I think there is a lot to be said for when you're in these meetings also, and you are pitching somebody a story and they need to get behind it and say, yeah, we're going to put money behind this and make this happen. If you're not good at selling that, there's something that can be lost, and a great idea could go away or not come to fruition.
If you're not excited, other people aren't going to be excited. And enthusiasm's contagious, and it is something you can learn to do, even if it feels counterintuitive at the start.
So are you practicing before you go to a meeting? Are you speaking in the mirror like, you're the best?
I mean,
this is amazing.
I've always been pretty confident, sorry to say. But I just say that it is something that can be practiced and learned, but somehow I was born with it. Thanks, Mom.
Yay! Good job. Good job. So is there anything else you want to tell us about your characters, or something that maybe, I don't know. I always think when, books go through such an evolution from start to finish, what you were thinking something that was going to happen that didn't, without any spoilers, but Was there anything that surprised you, or were the characters talking to you and telling you what to do at some point?
So many things changed during the course
Really?
of this book, except the ending. The ending was always the same, which was very helpful because the book changed a lot. I mean, there's one big thing I can't say because that would be a huge spoiler, but there was a character that was there and then wasn't. They were tough on me, these characters. But eventually I cracked it and figured them out. But I have so many deleted scenes from this book. I had one that I love and it didn't serve the story anymore and I had to get rid of it. But it was during the 2012 London Olympics and that was a lot of fun. Because I have a version of this. My husband called it like the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood version of this book where you're just kind of watching vampires hang out throughout the course of time. But it's a suspense book, so we needed to get the thriller elements going. So I do have a lot of fun scenes that just had to get chopped for whatever reason. But the ending was always the same, and I knew we were going to get there, so I just had to keep pushing through. But I love a lot of my side characters again, like I did in Stone Cold Fox, and I wish sometimes I could give them more real estate. But the dudes in this book kind of shine in parts, which was fun because I feel like in Stone Cold Fox, everyone was like, "Do you hate men?" And I don't. But the guys in this are really fun and hot and cute.
And that's a bonus. And that makes you even more intrigued for it to become a screen, be on screen, right? I want to see what these people really look like. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions here? I know you do. Mom.
Don't put my mom on the spot. She'll have a panic attack. What I can talk a little bit about the cover really quick because a lot of people have questions about that. So Stone Cold Fox, the cover came to me like in an email. There were a couple others in there, but it was so obviously like, this is it. This is the one. And We Love the Nightlife, the first few covers I got to see were a little bloodier than I thought. And I understand we do have to push the vampire element of the story. We don't want people to be like totally surprised that it's a vampire book. However, I wanted it to be a little cheekier. So I said something like, can we just have like a hint of Fang? And then they came back with this and I was so happy with it because I feel like it really captures the spirit of the book. So I love it.
And it is an alluring time, and there is just a lot of fascinating. I just watched. I think it was the documentary about Diane von Furstenberg, and it's just the lifestyle of that time period, and the glamour, and the just relentless pursuit of having a good time and being
very
out
hedonistic, but also
it's
creative
amazing.
and artsy. And I feel like people, I don't know, felt like I know Amber thought anything could happen in her life.
Yeah.
I don't think she was expecting that, but you'll have to find out if she finds her way.
It as women in the book, the characters, it's funny to hear them staying the same age physically, but observing the fashion trends over the course of time, because it's sort of like, when you're looking back, it's like, well, in my day, we looked better, we dressed up more, whatever, and then seeing kind of the changes in the way that they have to adjust their look, because everybody is really tied to like their prime time, but they have to adapt along the way. That was fun.
They're always in prime time. So Amber's more up for trying new things. Nicola kind of has to be coerced. But yeah, Amber's always up for whatever is new and exciting, and she's intrigued, and that's one of the issues that they have. Amber's always ready to move forward, and Nicola likes to stay in the past.
I was listening a little to the audio, which was excellent.
Aren't they great?
Great. Will you talk a little bit about how that process goes, and if you get any say about how that works? And I mean, because there's so many people who have made the kind of like switch over to, we love our bookstores and we need our books, but just listening all the time, because you can do all of these things while you're listening to a book.
Yeah, the audiobook, it's funny, like people are like, the audiobook was so great, did you listen to it? I'm like, I've read this book 100 times. I'm not going to listen to someone read it to me. However, I have listened to clips, and I was involved in the casting for both of my books. But this one was extra fun in some ways because there were two voices, and they found an English actress for Nicola, and I don't know. I got like a list, and you get little samples, and you can kind of imagine. They're not reading your book, but they're reading a book that they've done in the past as a voice actor. And there were a couple that were really good, but Nicola was like very specific to me. And I actually went back to the producer. I'm like, I still don't think she's here. Like, is there anyone else in your arsenal that I can listen to? And they found this woman, Catherine, and she just like nailed it. When I heard her voice, I was like, oh yeah, that's Nicola. And I actually heard from her the other day saying this was the most fun she had narrating an audiobook. And she's like, Nicola's my spirit animal. And I was like, that says a lot about you, Toots.
Seriously. She's like, can you meet me at midnight? You're
I
like,
know,
no,
I was
I
like,
can't.
honestly, I'm intrigued to meet her. But no, they both of them just killed it. It's really, really great. And I'm getting a lot of compliments on the production, so I'm happy for them
Yeah.
and for the book.
And it is kind of fun to even just if you're visiting the website of the publisher and you can hear that little bit,
Yeah, the
and then you're
sample.
sitting and reading it, you kind of then you have that. I don't know. It just, especially with anytime somebody has an accent, then it just kind of, I love thinking of that in my mind as then I'm reading. Gives a little more flavor to everything
Yeah,
for me.
they really did a great job. I wish I was more of an audiobook person. I find that my concentration goes elsewhere. I'm more of a reader, but I heard it's something you can learn. Like you can train yourself to listen, because I like the idea of, on my commute or whatever, if I'm going somewhere, because LA has a lot of traffic. So that would be a good thing to get involved in. But yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, you could check off a few more in LA traffic, that's for sure. Hi. Yes.
How did you come up with the names of the main characters?
Oh, well, Amber, I kind of just thought this is like a weird backstory that never came into the book, but I had envisioned that her grandma had this book that came out in the 40s. It was called like Amber's something, and it was kind of a salacious book, and she was named after her grandmother's favorite character. But then hilariously, and Wells, a lot of the names are names of my English girlfriends that live there, like their last names and things. Like Courtney is one of my friends, Cooper's another friend. I put them together. So Wells is one of my really good girlfriends' maiden names. And then she called me and she was like, Rach, did you know my mom's dog is Amber? And I was like, oh, good. Amber Wells. That's exactly who I was naming her after. And then Nicola, I just always kind of liked the name. I always thought it was really sexy and cool. And it is an older name, too. It's been around a long time. But Clofton is actually the name. So my father-in-law is English. And he's of the Crofts, and there's a Croft ancestral home, and it's called Clofton Hall. So that's why I picked that.
Yes. Okay. So talk a little bit about the home, because it's very. I mean, you did such a good job. We're coming in, and it's like you're there. I mean, I could feel it.
Well, I have their house, their ancestral home. It's called the Laurels in the book. And it's in Hampstead Heath, which is Hampstead. The village is beautiful, and there's all of these really old stately homes. So I took a lot of photos from the outside, and then I would Google the addresses to see the inside. And I took little YouTube tours of these old homes. But no, I really did. I wanted it to feel like a trip to London, truly. So I wanted to make sure. When I wrote the first draft, I actually went back a second time to confirm that everything felt how I remembered it. And I took pictures of, after the girls have their first kill together, they go to the powder room in Claridge's hotel, and I went in there and took the pictures and made sure it like matched how I remembered it. So everything's very well researched in this novel as far as locations go, because I'm also thinking as a director.
Yeah, it's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it. You got to go into these fancy bathrooms and go all
happy
over
to do it. Happy to do it.
Yeah, I mean, so London has so many great cemeteries.
I'm always in
thinking about
them. I'm like, if
Highgate.
I see a cemetery, I'm like, let's go in there.
Yeah. One of the questions that came in from the online audience was about, Hollywood and TV, and I don't think you guys mentioned that yet, have you? Have the rights been sold to either of your books?
Stone Cold Fox, yes. So that's in development for TV. Don't have any updates yet beyond that, but hopefully more to come soon. And I'm having conversations still about We Love the Nightlife, but I don't have any news to announce. So that's a boring answer to a great question, but
Well,
everything's in process.
It's interesting because we've been talking here at the store about, it's about time for a new vampire story.
Yes.
It's been a couple years, and somebody throwing a new spin on it. And I mentioned before we got started about that George Hamilton film. What was it called? Love at First Bite.
Oh.
Did you ever see that, Olivia?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like the 70s disco era vampire. Great story.
You can't go wrong with the disco.
You
No.
can't.
No.
It's fun. Everybody likes it.
Mm-hmm.
I think. But my dad doesn't. But he does like the song "I Love the Nightlife" by Alicia Bridges, which is why I called this book "We Love the Nightlife."
And with things like that, do you have to clear that?
I
Or
think.
talk
I
about the
didn't.
songs?
But I also didn't.
Should we have asked this earlier?
I didn't use any lyrics, or I
Yeah.
just mostly mentioned things, but I didn't use lyrics or things like that. So I assume my publisher would have flagged that.
Yeah.
So I think we're in the clear.
That's their job. You're the creative. I mean, you can't be bogged down with these legal stuff. But it's just, those are the kind of songs that it's just everybody, I mean, there's,
Right. You can say the
immediately
song title and
recognizable.
people can hear
Right.
it.
Mm-hmm. Although I wouldn't have been able to name the singer.
Oh, yeah. I feel like I don't know how many hits she had, but I think that was her big one.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it because she's on my playlist. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Did you do a playlist to share with your readers? for
Yes, I
this?
have
Okay,
one
there
on
is
Spotify.
Okay,
You
good.
can search "We Love the Nightlife" by Rachel Koller Croft. It'll pop right up.
Oh, very nice. And now are people, when they see you or are out with you, who know you, expecting you to, are you a dancer or are you not?
Oh, I'm a dancer.
Oh, you are. Okay, because there is
Yeah.
there is a lot of discussion and emphasis on, like, really, when somebody's really able to own the dance floor.
Yeah, I did it a lot to figure out how I was gonna describe it, because I was like, how am I gonna talk about this? And then I would just start like moving in my office, and I'm like, oh yeah, look at it. Like I don't know, it just kind of came to me. But I've been a dancer since I was a little girl. It's really important to me, so I wanted that to shine through in the book. So I'm glad you picked up on it.
Yes, and maybe want to go out and go dance a little bit. Or
Great.
Get some of the energy out. Definitely. Do you have any other questions from me?
Yeah, maybe talk a little bit about your apprenticeship as a writer. And so Stone Cold Fox was your first published novel, right? Are there earlier books in drawers and things, or was this your first attempt at a
It
novel?
was my first novel,
Wow.
Stone Cold Fox. But I've been a screenwriter too. So I started screenwriting professionally in 2015. And I love screenwriting, but one of the reasons I wanted to write a book, I've always wanted to write a book, but one of the reasons I wrote that book when I did is I feel like there's just this heavy emphasis on IP, and that's how you sell something to get made. And I was pitching, on other people's wonderful books. But I was like, I want to, tell my own stories here too. And so I'm playing the long game a little bit and writing
Yes.
my own books with the intent to adapt them, because I'm not selling them to anyone that won't let me do it, because it's my IP. So that's sort of how it all got started. But I will say, like, the first draft of Stone Cold Fox is very different from the final version, and even the version I ended up selling with my agent. I worked with an agent on another draft. But yeah.
Do you have any advice for aspiring writers?
I mean, my number one, definitely be your number one fan, which I think I talked about already. But
Sell your first novel.
yeah,
And also have your second one be an instant bestseller.
I think sometimes it's really like a book is so long, like the sheer volume can be really overwhelming, and you want to think, oh God, like I have to do all of these words. I mean, typically a thriller, for example, is at anywhere from 80,000 words to 100,000 words, give or take. That's a lot, but you can't think about it that way. You just take it day by day, chapter by chapter. You don't have to write in order. If there are scenes you're super excited to write them first. Like, you don't have to, you can do whatever you want. It's your book. So whatever works best for your process, and you can try different things. My process for my first book was really different from my process for my second book. I don't actually want to emulate the process for my second book again. So I'm trying to blend first learnings from my first and second book as now that I'm writing my third. But I think just like manage your overwhelm and just take it day by day. And it will come together. The words come together. And the other cool thing about writing that, like, especially books, there are things your subconscious plants for you that you don't even know what's happening until you're in the revision stage. There were things in this book that ended up being really juicy little twists and things like that that weren't necessarily intentional the first go around.
Really?
And then when I started connecting the lines, I was like, I can't believe I did this for myself. And that happened in Stone Cold Fox too. And I'm not even a particularly woo-woo person for what it's worth, but I think there is something that even you're not consciously working on it, your brain is working for you, and you will discover it in your many, many phases of revision. But I think that's part of the magic and part of the fun.
So how much time are you, when you're stepping back and then you're coming at it to say, okay, this is going to be, you know, another rewrite or another revision, are you, I mean, is this just days or is it like weeks so that you really have fresh eyes and can
for
be
this book, I didn't have time to it was days. But I do find that if you have to do it, you'll do it.
Yeah.
And I just knew that I would. I was like, this is what I'm doing today. And every day until I turn this book in. I unfortunately have found that my brain works really different from outlining versus drafting, which is cool, but it's inefficient. Like I can do a full outline, and then as I'm drafting, something more exciting happens. And then the whole outline is useless to me because I'm going in a different direction. But with both of my books, I always knew how they would end. So that's something I'm taking with me with all my books. I'm open to that changing. I don't want to like say that I will always know the ending of my book, but I find that very helpful knowing that I go completely off the rails if I outline anyway, but it always kind of finds its way back
You know,
to
you're
that
headed in a
initial
specific
ending.
direction.
So for my all two of my books, that's been the case. But more to come.
I just read, what is it? It's the sequel. You have the plot and then the sequel.
Oh, I haven't read that yet.
It's really good.
Okay.
But
I love the plot.
She makes a reference to, because she's out promoting her debut novel, and how she meets, you know, writers along the way, and how just basically like totally resentful they are of her because she's written one book and sold it, and it's getting all this acclaim and all of this attention and all of this promotion and all of this, and you know, people want to write it, you know, explain it away because her husband has a famous writer and this and that and whatever, and so it made me think there's got to be like a little gem of truth in there. Like people have got to be very if when you meet writers, maybe a little bit resentful if they've been writing, you know, 10 different books over the years and still waiting for somebody to say yes, and then you're like, oh, this is my first book, there it is. We're at the
Maybe.
bookstore.
No one's told me to my face. Thankfully, they were raised right. Talk about me behind my back. But I will say, since publishing my first book, the thriller community of writers is so awesome. And I'm sure, Patrick, you know that too. Like, thriller writers are so warm and welcoming and helpful, and we all champion each other's books. I love going to Thriller Fest every year in New York. It's so fun. Like, I wasn't sure what to expect because not that screenwriters aren't friendly, because they are, but it's a little more, I think there's a little more competition because there's only so many jobs, or at least that's the perception. But like, a book is a book, and if you wrote a good book, in all likelihood, you'll get it published, and we're not necessarily in competition in the same way. So I guess as far as like my experience, I haven't, like, I don't have a nemesis or anything yet, but I do have a cultural nemesis. There is a woman that ripped me in the Washington Post the other day, and I recognized her name because she also did not like my movie Torn Hearts in the New York Times. But I think it's exciting to have a cultural nemesis that's very 90s and chic and legacy media as well. Like, hit me again, Lena. Go for
That might
it.
be a little tidbit in the next book coming up, right?
I mean, the thing is, not
knows?
everything is for everybody. So, you know, it's just the nature of the beast.
I will say, in my great opportunity to talk to a lot of thriller writers, that has been my takeaway, that they're the coolest people, and that they're sort of a lot lighter. They're the lighter of the writers. They're
Truly.
the happiest of the people because they get to get all of their dark weirdness out in books, and then they can just be very chill people who seem to enjoy their lives.
We write about the darkest stuff,
Yeah.
but then we just like smile and have fun when we're all together. It's
and
really
then they'll
great.
say that the romance ones are the weird ones.
Really? I'll keep you
I know
posted.
that they're not
I
as
haven't-
friendly, and it's not the same. Like that, I've heard this that the conferences and stuff are not the same.
Okay, I'm gonna have to get the
not
scoop
like that
from.
they're
I have
all
a couple
hanging like
girlfriends
that.
that dabble in both genres, so I'll have to ask them about that.
I mean, this is all third hand stuff. I take it because I've heard it more than
I
once.
like drama, so I want to know about it.
I'm sure it's true. Does anybody else have anything you want to ask Miss Rachel here?
I have one for you, Olivia.
Uh-oh.
So, when are we going to see the first Olivia Fierro novel?
Great question, Patrick.
It will have to be for children. Max maybe 10 or 12 pages. I'm thinking Escargot part 2.
That's inspiring over there.
No, it is so funny because I said to myself, oh, I'm sure I'm going to sit down and make this a priority when I'm not working my grind of getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then it's like, blink and a year went by and I have yet to even have an idea. So I hope to still cultivate an idea and maybe sometime. We'll see.
The beauty of books is you can write one anytime. I mean, there's no
Yes.
limitation with a book. Some people publish when they're 21. Some people publish when they're 40. Some people publish when they're 60, 70 plus. So
Well,
Very
thanks so much,
democratic.
Olivia, for what you do for awareness of books and literacy in Phoenix area.
My pleasure.
really,
Thank you.
thank you, Olivia,
Sadly,
for being here.
the irony is I can't get my son to read to save my life. So, it's just if I can encourage other people, at least outside of my own house, it's a win.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you so
doing
much, and
this. Thank you to the Poison
congratulations.
Pen, and thank you all for being here. It's been so fun.
Thank you. Tell your friends about the book, and they will love it. And for those of us who don't get out much late at night, we don't have exciting lives. It's all in here.
It scratches an itch,
Right?
so
Yeah.
get involved.
That's a very good way to put it. Thanks, Rachel, for having me.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Did you have a drawing that you wanted to do?
Oh,
or is
yes.
that-
Let's do the door prize. Mom, do you want to bring it over here? And has everyone entered? Okay, let's pause then for a second. There's a door prize. Just write your name and email down. It's luxury skincare valued at $500 plus. It's really nice stuff. So I'm going to give that away shortly. But everyone can take a second to enter. That's fine. We'll do that in a few minutes.
Gentlemen,
Yes, it's back there. Also by the wine and cookies. I always need to be reminded about the door prize.
that's really hard to remember.
Oh, yeah. Can I just come behind you?